Wake up, brother, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do you.
Alchemist is originally written by Paulo Coelho, and this is translated by Cliff E. Lander. He is the Brazilian writer and is famous for Alchemist Novel. Alchemist is worldwide translated, and the novel is translated all over the world. Prologue, translated by Clifford E. Lenders. The alchemist picked up a book that someone in the caravan had bought. Leafing through the pages, he found a story about Narcissus. The alchemist knew the legend of Narcissus, a youth who knelt daily beside a lake to contemplate his own beauty. He was so fascinated by himself that one morning he fell into the lake and drowned. At the spot he fell, a flower was born, which was called the Narcissus. But this was not how the author of the book ended the story. He said that when Narcissus died, the goddesses of the forest appeared and found the lake, which had been fresh water, transferred into lake of salt. He said when Narcissus died, the goddesses of the forest appeared and found the lake, which had been fresh water, transferred into the lake of salty tears. "Why do you weep?" the goddesses asked. "I weep for Narcissus," the lake replied. "Ah, it is no surprise that you weep for Narcissus," they said. "For though we always pursued him in the forest, you alone could contemplate his beauty close at hand." "But was Narcissus beautiful?" the lake asked. "Who better than you to know that?" the goddesses asked in wonder. "After all, it was by your bank that he knelt each day to contemplate himself." The lake was silent for some time. Finally it said, "I weep for Narcissus, but I never noticed that Narcissus was beautiful. I weep because each time he knelt beside my bank, I could see in depths of my own eyes my own beauty reflected." What a lovely story, the alchemist thought. Part 1. The boy's name was Santiago. Dusk was falling as the boy arrived with his herd at an abandoned church. The roof had fallen in long ago, and an enormous sycamore had grown on the spot where scarcity had once stood. He decided to spend the night there. He saw to it that all the sheep entered through the ruined gate and then laid some planks across it to prevent the flocks from wandering away during the night. There were no wolves in the region, but once an animal had strayed during the night, and the boy had to spend entire next day searching for it. He wiped the floor with his jacket and lay down, using the book he had just finished reading as a pillow. He told himself that he could have to start reading thicker books. They lasted longer and made more comfortable pillows. It was still dark when he awoke, and looking up, he could see the stars through the half-destroyed roof. "I wanted to sleep a little longer," he thought. He had had the same dream that night as a week ago, and once again he had awakened before it ended. He rose and, taking up his crook, began to awaken the sheep. He had noticed that as soon he awoke, most of his animals also began to stir. It was as if some mysterious energy bound his life to that of the sheep, with whom he spent last 2 years, leading them through the countryside in search of food and water. "They were so used to me that they knew my schedule," he muttered. Thinking about that for a moment, he realized that it could be the other way around, that it was he who had become accustomed to their schedule. But there were certain of them who took a bit longer to awaken, and one by one, with his croak calling each by name. He had always believed that sheep were able to understand what he said, so there were times when he read them parts of his books that he made an impression on him. So there were times when he read them, or when he could tell them of the loneliness or the happiness of the shepherd in the fields. Sometimes he would comment to them on the things he had seen in the villages, but for the past few days he had spoken to them about only one thing: the girl, the daughter of a merchant, who lived in the village they could reach in about 4 days. He had been to the village once again the year before. The merchant was the proprietor of a dry goods shop, and he always demanded that the sheep be shred in his presence, so that he could not be cheated. A friend had told the boy about the shop, and he had taken his sheep there. "I need to sell some wool," the boy told the merchant. The shop was busy, and the man asked the shepherd to wait till the afternoon. So the boy sat on the steps of the shop and took a book from his bag. "I did not know shepherd knew how to read," said a girl's voice behind him. The girl was typical of the region of Andalusia, and the eyes that vaguely recalled the Moorish conquerors. "Well, usually I learn more from my sheep than from books," he answered. During the 2 hours they talked, she told him that she was a merchant's daughter, where each day was like all others. The shepherd told her of Andalusian countryside countryside and related the news from the other towns where he stopped. It was a pleasant change from talking to his sheep. "How did you learn to read?" the girl asked at one point. "Like everybody learns," he said, "in school." "Well, if you know how to read, why are you just a shepherd?" The boy mumbled an answer that allowed him to avoid responding to her question. He was sure the girl would never understand. He went on telling stories about his travels, and her bright Moorish eyes went wide with fear and surprise. As the time passed, the boy found himself wishing that the day would never end, that her father would stay busy and keep him waiting for 3 days. He recognized that he was feeling something he had never experienced before, the desire to live in one place forever. With the girl with the raven hairs, his days would never be the same again. But finally, the merchant appeared and asked the boy to share 4 sheep. He waited for the wool and asked the shepherd to come back the following year. And now it was only 4 days before he would be back in that same village. He was excited and at the same time uneasy. Maybe the girl had already forgotten him. Lots of shepherds passed through selling their wool. "It does not matter," he said to his sheep. "I know other girls in the places." But in his heart, he knew that it did not matter, and he knew that shepherds like seamen who could make them forget the joys of carefree wandering. Day was dawning, and the shepherd urged his sheep in the direction of the sun. They never had to make any decisions, he thought. Maybe that's why they always stay close to me. The only thing that concerned the shepherd was food and water. As long as the boy knew how to find the best pastures in Andalusia, they would be his friends. Yes, their days were all the same, with the seemingly endless hours between sunrise and dusk, and they had never read a book in their youth lives and did not understand when the boy told them about the sights of the cities. They were content with just food and water, and in exchange they generously gave their wool, their company, and once in a while their meat. "If I become a monster today and decided to kill them one by one, they would become aware only after most of the flock had been slaughtered," thought the boy. "They trust me and they have forgotten how to rely on their own instincts because I led them to nourishment." The boy was surprised at his thoughts. Maybe the church with the sycamore growing from within had been haunted. It had caused him to have the same dream for the second time, and it was causing him to feel anger toward his faithful companions. He drank a bit from the wine that remained from his dinner of the night before, and he gathered his jacket closer to his body. He knew that a few hours from now, with the sun at its zenith, the heat would be so great that he would not be able to lead his flocks across the field. It was a time of the day when all the Spain slept during the summer. The heat lasted until nightfall, and all that time he had to carry his jacket. But when he thought complain about the burden of his weight, because he had the jacket, he had withstood the cold of the dawn. "We have to be prepared for change," he thought, and he was grateful for the jacket's weight and warmth. The jacket had a purpose, and so did the boy. His purpose in life was to travel, and after 2 years of walking the Andalusian terrain, he knew all the cities of the region. He was planning on his visit to explain to the girl how it was that a simple shepherd knew how to read, that he had attended a seminary until he was 16. His parents had wanted him to become a priest, and thereby a source of pride for a simple farm family. They worked hard just to have food and water like the sheep. He had studied Latin, Spanish, theology, but ever since he had been a child, he had wanted to know the world, and this was much more important to him than knowing God and learning about the man's sins. One afternoon on the visit to his family, he had summoned up the courage to tell his father that he did not want to become a priest, that he wanted to travel. "People from all over the world have passed through this village, son," said his father. "They come in search of new things, but when they leave, they are basically the same people they were when they arrived. They climbed the mountain to see the castle, and they went up thinking that the past was better than what we had now. They have blonde hair or dark skin, but basically they are the same as the people who live right here. But I did not like to see the castle in the town where they lived," the boy explained. "Those people, when they see our land, say that they would like to live here forever," his father continued. "Well, I would like to see their land and see how they live," said his son. "The people who come here have a lot of money to spend, so they can afford to travel," his father said. "Amongst us, the only one who travel are the shepherds. Well, then I'll be shepherd." His father said no more. The next day, he gave his son a pouch that had 3 ancient Spanish gold coins. "I found these one day in the field. I wanted them to be the part of your inheritance, but use them to buy your flocks. Take to the field, and someday you will learn that our countryside is the best, and our women are the most beautiful." And he gave the boy his blessing. The boy could see in his father's gaze a desire to be able himself to travel the world, a desire that was still alive, despite his father's having had to bury it for dozens of years under the burden of struggle for water to drink, food to eat, and the same place to sleep every night of his life. The horizon was tinged with red, and suddenly the sun appeared. The boy thought back to that conversation with his father and felt happy. He had already seen many castles and met many women, but none the equal of the one who awaited him several days hence. He owned a jacket, a book that he could trade for another, and a flock of sheep, but most important, he was able every day to live out his dream. If he were too tired of the Andalusian field, he would sell his sheep and go to sea. By the time he would have enough of the sea, he would already have known other cities, other women, and other chances to be happy. I have not found God in seminary, he thought as he looked at the sunrise. Whenever he could cut out a new road to travel, he had never been to that ruined church before, in spite of having traveled through those parts many times. The world was huge and he had to allow his sheep to set the route for a while, and he would discover other interesting things. The problem is that they don't even realize that they are walking a new road every day. They don't see that the fields are new and the seasons change. All they think about is food and water. Maybe we are all that way, the boy mused. Even me, I have not thought of other women since I have met the merchant daughter. Look at the sun. He calculated that he would reach Tarifa before midday. There he could exchange his book for a thinner one, fill his wine bottle, shave and have a haircut. He had to prepare himself for his meeting with the girl, and he did not want to think about the possibility that some other shepherd with a large flock of sheep had arrived there before him and asked for her hand. It's the possibility of having a dream come true that makes life interesting, he thought as he looked again at the position of the sun and hurried his pace. He suddenly remembered that in Tarifa there was a woman who interpreted dreams. The old woman led the boy to a room at the back of her house. It was separated from her living room by a curtain of colored beds. The room furnishings consist of a table, an image of a sacred heart of Jesus, and 2 chairs. The woman sat down and told him to be seated as well. Then she took both of his hands in her and began quietly to pray. It sounded like a gypsy prayer. The boy had already had experience on the road with the gypsies. They also traveled. They had no flocks of sheep. People said that gypsies spend their lives tricking others. It was also said that they had a pact with devils and that they kidnapped children and take them away to their mysterious camps, made them slaves. As a child, the boy had always been frightened to death that he would be captured by gypsies and his childhood fear returned when the old woman took his hands in hers. But she has the sacred heart of Jesus there, he thought, trying to reassure himself. He did not want his hand to begin trembling, showing the old woman that he was fearful. He recited an Our Father silently. Very interesting, said the woman, never taking her eyes from the boy's hand, and then she fell silent. His hand began to tremble and the woman sensed it. He quickly pulled his hand away. I did not come here to have you read my plum, he said, already regretting having come. He thought for a moment that it would be better to pay her fee and leave without learning a thing, that he was giving too much importance to his recurrent dream. You came so that you could learn about your dreams, said the old woman, and the dreams are the language of God. When he speaks in our language, I can interpret what he has said, but if he speaks in the language of the soul, it is only you who can understand. But whichever it is, I am going to charge you for consultation. Another trick, the boy thought, but he decided to take a chance. A shepherd always take his chance with wolves and with droughts, and that's what makes a shepherd's life exciting. I have had the same dream twice, he said. I dreamed that I was in a field with my sheep when a child appeared and began to play with the animals. I don't like people to do that because the sheep are afraid of strangers, but the child always seemed to be able to play with them without frightening them. I don't know how animals know the age of human beings. Tell me more about your dreams, said the woman. I have to get back to my cooking, and since you don't have much money, I can't give you a lot of time. The child went on playing with my sheep for quite a while, continued the boy, a bit upset, and suddenly the child took me by both hands and transferred me to Egyptian pyramids. He paused for a moment to see if the woman knew what the Egyptian pyramids were, but she said nothing. Then at the Egyptian pyramid, he said the last 3 words slowly, so that the old woman would understand. Child said to me, if you come here, you will find a hidden treasure. And just as he was about to show me the exact location, I woke up both times. The woman was silent for some time, then she again took his hand and studied them carefully. I'm not going to charge you anything now, she said, but I want 1/10 of the treasure if you found it. The boy laughed out of happiness. He was going to be able to save the little money he had because of the dream about the hidden treasure. Well, interpret the dream, he said. First, swear to me whether that you will give me 1/10 of your treasure in exchange for what I am going to tell you. The shepherd swore that he would. The old woman asked him to swear again while looking at the image of the sacred heart of Jesus. It's a dream in the language of the world, she said. I can interpret it, but the interpretation is very difficult. That's why I feel that I deserve part of what you find.